Okay, let's go back to VS Code and deal with the client side of things now. And let's close the stuff at the top down, and we're going to go back to our register component. And inside here, we've got a couple of things we're not using, but we are commenting out the register method. So let's uncomment what we have inside here. And this should effectively stay roughly the same. But when we do get the response now, we'll do something slightly different. And instead of log into the console and cancelling the form, we'll take the opportunity to redirect them, because they are effectively going to be logged in at this point, because we're returning to them a token. So when we get the response, we'll say list.router, which we do not have yet. So we'll need to inject the router into this as well. So we'll say private router equals inject and the router, and back down to our register method, we'll say list.router and navigate by URL, and we'll say /members. And we're not actually doing anything with the response, so we'll just swap that for an underscore as well. Now we also need to think about server-side validation errors. We do have validation coming back from the server that's going to be handled by our interceptor. And if we do catch a validation error that we don't catch on the client side, then we also want to display that to the user as well. So we'll add a class property inside here for validation errors, and we'll say validation errors, and this is going to be a type of string array, or it's going to be undefined. And if we get an error, so let's go back down to our register method, we won't use a toast, and instead we'll say list.validationErrors equals error. And then we can use this inside our register component template. So we'll say register component HTML, we'll open this one up, and in between the inputs and the buttons, we'll take the opportunity to display the validation errors. So we'll use the built-in control flow. We'll say @if, and then we'll check for the validation errors.length and see if it is greater than 0, or because we've got an alternative of undefined, instead of checking the length, then we could just check for validation errors. And then we'll add a div and give it a class of alert and alert-danger. And we'll have an unordered list inside here, and then we'll use @for and say error of validation errors, and we'll use the index as the tracker here, and then we'll just have a list item and use double curly brackets and specify error. And we also need to think about the date property as well, because if we go back and take a look at our form, we've still got the JSON output here at the moment. But if I select a date of birth, then this is using this kind of format, 2006-05-09T, and then the time information. But we want this to go up just as a date, and we just want this information, just the date part, without any of the time information. Otherwise, we're going to get an error when we try and send this to our API if we keep that same formatting. So we also need to do something additional for that as well. So we'll head back to the register component, and let's just create an additional method inside here so that we can get the date only from a string. So we'll make it private. We're only going to use it inside here, and we'll say get date only, and we'll pass in the date of birth, which is a type of string, or undefined. We'll check this. And if we do not have the DOB, then we're going to return. And from here, we're going to return a new date and say DOB, and we're going to use the toISO string. And then we could just simply use the slice method and say that we want to take the first character, which is 0, where we start from, and the end of the date before the T will be the 10th character. And then we can go up to our register methods, and inside here we can say const DOB equals list.getDateOnly, and we'll use list.registerForm.get, and we'll get the date of birth and dot value. And then below this, we can say list.registerForm, and we can use the patch value function so that we update the value of a field, and we're going to target the date of birth here and set it to DOB, which is going to give us just the date part of the dates. And now we're in a position to go test. So let's take a look. I'll just go to register. And we've still got the JSON values there, so let's remove them as well. And we'll go back to our form and we'll just take out the JSON stuff that we are displaying there. And inside our form, we've still got the ability to submit the form to our server at this point. And I'm going to do that. I just want to check the server-side validation. And what we get back is this, the validation errors from our server. Although I'd prefer them to, it looks a bit weird with them being in the middle there. So let's go back and adjust the styling of that. And we'll just give it a text-start class as well. And we'll go back, take another look, we'll submit again. And this time it looks a bit cleaner. So we see the different inputs that we're missing that are required. And that's our server-side validation. So that's fine. But we'd prefer to stop them on the client side, if we can, before we actually send the request to the server. So let's go back to our form, and where we've got our register button, we can give this a disabled value. So we'll say disabled, and we'll say exclamation mark, and register form.valid. And we should find, if we go back to our form and click register, then this is going to be disabled until we've got a valid form. So let's try and register a new user. I'll just say username of Dave. I'll say known as Dave. We'll say date of birth and just pick any random dates. I'll say city, London, I'll say UK, and give it a password and confirm that password. And if I click register, then what should happen, which hasn't happened, is we've not sent up any of the values. So I've made a mistake in the component here. And yeah, sure, I'm sending up this .model, which is not correct. This needs to be the register form.value. That's what we want to send up. And inside here, we can actually remove the model that we're not going to be using. So let's remove that toaster as well. We're not using that. We're not using the model property. And make sure there's no errors, because that didn't look grayed out, so it suggests it was being used somewhere. And I'll just remove the imports from the top here as well. And we don't need that JSON pipe either anymore, so let's also remove that and remove it from the imports inside here as well. And let's see how we're doing. Okay, that looks clean. And this time, let's try again. So back to our register form, let's do that one more time. Username Dave, known as Dave, date of birth we'll select and just pick any random dates. Again, City of London, UK, and the password. And confirm the password and click register. This time it looks a bit more like it, and we're taken to our members component. Perfect. So there is one thing we need to think about when a user is registered though. If we go and edit the profile and edit the photos, and if we add a new photo here, then on our API side of things, because it's their first photo they're uploading, that's going to be set to main. But we also need to do something on the client side. So if we want to see the navbar updating, for instance, and this image updating with the new photo that's set to main, we need to do a bit more work, because if we go back to our photo editor components, and let's open up the photo editor component.ts, we've got a set main photo method that does some stuff, but that only occurs when the user selects that as the main photo. But what about when they initially upload a photo? Well, inside the initialize uploader, we have the onSuccess, but this is only going to push a new photo into the user's array. So what we'd expect to happen currently if the user did upload a photo is we'd see a new photo in the list of photos here, but we wouldn't expect to see that updating by itself. So inside here, inside the onSuccess item, then effectively we need to check to see if the photo we get back from the API is main, as that means it's a new photo for a user that doesn't have any photos. So we'll let that check and we'll say if photo.isMain, then we can effectively set this image to be their main image. So we can use the same kind of functionality that we have here. So the const user equals this account service, etc. We can use this to set the image in the navbar effectively. So let's add that inside here. And then we also need to do something for the updated member photos and emit that as well. So once again, I'll just go and borrow some code that we already have. And we can say from the set photo method, let's just copy this code and also paste this below the if statement. And that will take care of updating the photo to main. It would be cleaner just to extract this into its own method, but we only need this in 2 places, and the quickest and easiest way at the moment is just to copy and paste. If you would prefer that to be cleaner, then do see that as a minor exercise just to extract this code for setting of the main photo into its own method and see if you can get it to work that way. I just want to make sure this is going to work with our code as it stands at the moment. And if we go back to the browser and edit photos, and I'm just going to drag a new photo inside here. Let's go for Batman this time and click on upload all. What we want to see here is things updating. And interestingly, that didn't work as expected, because this doesn't appear to be the main photo. As we can see from the user interface, we've got access to set it as main, and we've got access to delete it. So I'm just going to check the network tab, and let's just delete this because it doesn't appear to be the main, so let's just remove it anyway. And that confirms it pretty much that it's not being set to the main on the API. I'll just refresh this page and go and edit the photos. And I just want to see what's coming back from the API here, so I'll just drag the photo in again. And I'll click upload all and just check what is coming back from the API in the preview. So we've got the isMain set to false. That's interesting. And that does suggest a logic issue with the API code. So I'm just going to take a look at the users controller and just double check what we're doing inside here. It's not something we tested earlier. And when we add a photo, then yeah, sure, we're missing a check to see if this is the user's first photo. So to resolve this, let's go back first of all and just delete the image once again whilst we're still allowed to. And I'll delete that image. And let's go back to the API. And where we've got our photo, we'll just do a check inside here and say that if the user.photos.count is equal to 0, then the photo.isMain, we're going to set that to true. And that way, when we do upload this image, then effectively the isMain property will be set to true, and it should trigger the rest of the stuff updating on our client side. So I'm just going to restart the API controller and then go back and give that another go. And that has now restarted. So let's give that another go. And let's just drag the image in, and I'll click upload all, and what should happen this time, because the photo should be the main photo, is we do get this updated in every location. Perfect. Okay, that brings us to the end of this section. Now that we've got the ability to register our users, and I'll close this stuff down, and inside source control, let's commit our changes as we have reached the end of this section. So I'll stage all the changes, and I'll just say end of section 12 and commit these changes and sync them with GitHub, and we'll just wrap this up with a summary.